As promised, joining us now from The Athletic, it is my buddy Matt Schneidman. Matt, welcome to the show. We're here to talk about your terrific story. Tell us more about Kenneth Odumegwu's travels from Nigeria to Green Bay.
Listen, Jason, for as good of a friend as you've been these last 4 years, I think this is only my second appearance on your show since I got here in July 2019. We'll discuss that later. I thought I was coming on here to discuss, what I'm looking for in routes on air today at practice, but I guess not.
Well, there's a lot in your story that dropped this morning on The Athletic about Aaron Rodgers' departure. Aaron Rodgers talked to you at length. Tausch and I both have a theory on that, and that is this, that this story, if he doesn't talk to you, if he says, no, Matt, sorry, or if he ghosts you, it's an ugly story for Aaron Rodgers. Is that fair for us to think?
Yeah, I think because certainly the reason I wanted to give him a chance to talk was because I know no matter how people think this whole thing went down, whoever they believe, there's two sides to every story. No matter who you think is telling the truth, my job is to present both sides equally and let the reader decide. It's not my job to let my opinion get in the way of what I write, which I hope is what I did with this story. I tried to, at least. So, yeah, I think it would have been a lot less complete. It would have been a lot less or a lot more shallow. And who knows, maybe less factual, depending on who's really telling the truth. We're never going to know until we hook all these fools up to a lie detector, which I don't think The Athletic has the capability of doing. But listen, there's truths and probably skewed things everywhere. I just tried to do my best job of presenting both sides' perspective of what went down and try to give the most complete picture of the last 3 years.
So there were a lot of things that jumped out at both Tausch and I as we got up early and read this, but I want to start here, and I'm going to read you a paragraph that you so eloquently wrote. According to the source associated with the team, the Packers weren't satisfied with Rodgers' commitment and effort, not only during the voluntary OTAs, but on a day-to-day basis afterward. Rodgers takes exception to the thought that the team wanted more from him in the months after giving him the richest contract in NFL history. My question for you is, did anyone, anonymously, not so anonymously, whatever it is, did anyone tell you what exactly gave them that feeling that he wasn't giving them the commitment and effort that they needed from him on a day-to-day basis after OTAs? Because I think we all agree that even though he doesn't think so, Rodgers should have been there for some of OTAs with a young wide receiver core around him. But what was going on during the season that caused them to think that way?
Yeah, that's something I tried to pry into, and the way it was described to me was just general disappointment with, general day-to-day stuff. I sought out specific examples, did not get many of those, but I think, yeah, OTAs was certainly one thing, but then just a not every day that they were disappointed with his effort, but just a general day-to-day of maybe not helping out the young guys as much as they would have liked, whatever it may be. But that was a strong point of kind of how the Packers felt Rodgers changed after they gave him that extension, and I expected nothing else from Aaron than to strongly refute that, which he obviously did. But that was something interesting that I found out in this reporting process was we obviously knew something changed. That's why they traded him, because Gutekunst has said that he wanted Aaron to be his quarterback for at least 2 more years after the extension. So something changed, and it wasn't just, he didn't respond to a couple texts this offseason. So probably the other biggest thing in the past calendar year was that, just a general disappointment with Aaron's effort, how much he was bought in, and he obviously feels completely differently.
Yeah, Matt, the thing that I keep asking, because we all know that when Jordan Love was drafted, that dynamic changed, and Aaron said, I don't like, I talk to the people that I like, and why would Goody, when he was told that Aaron Rodgers' agent called Mark Murphy to fire him, why would Goody offer that extension, and why would Aaron Rodgers accept if they both knew that this relationship was never going to be? Was it just we can both work around it, and Aaron is a great player? Or why would they both accept that when neither of them really felt like either wanted them?
Yeah, I think Aaron wanted to be here in Green Bay. I think he was able to this is just my personal belief, just from hearing things over the past couple of years and listening to Rodgers talk publicly. I think he wanted to be here. Yeah, I think he wanted to retire here. He was able to put his feelings for the GM aside. I think from Goody's perspective, maybe people disagree with me, and it's easy to think differently in hindsight, but he didn't really have a choice after that 21 season. You can't trade a guy who's won the last 2 MVPs. I mean, you can, but that would probably look foolish, even if you have to see what you have in Love. At the end of the day, this probably goes on in more buildings than we know, kind of friction and resentment under the surface that is covered up by winning. And yes, it became public here in Green Bay a couple of years ago, but I think winning, Brian Gutekunst knows, winning is what allows him to keep his job. And Aaron Rodgers helps him win. So he had to swallow whatever feelings he had for Rodgers. Rodgers had to swallow whatever feelings he had for Goody, because winning, and in both guys' cases, Green Bay provided both of them the best chance to excel at their jobs. They just had to swallow it and eat it up. Now, in hindsight, like I said, was it the wrong decision to extend him? I think you have to judge that by what was the right decision at the time. I'm of the belief that it was the right decision to extend him, considering what he had done in the 2 seasons prior. But them trading him after one down season, combined with it was time to see what Jordan had, kind of reinforces what Rodgers seems to think, that at the first out the Packers had, they were going to take it. He thought he was going to be here for 1 or 2 more years after they drafted Love. And he said publicly, winning 2 MVPs changed that. I think that, and he seems to think the Packers were just looking for the first out, not only in Rodgers' play with what they had in Love, but also in the way that extension was structured.
So, Matt, one of the things that I look back at last season, obviously he busts his thumb up and he struggles and the team struggles, but then you go down and win in Chicago. And I always just thought, had Aaron come out and said, you know what, this season's been tough. We're fighting. We're competing. I love the way these young players are going. We're growing together. I want to finish my career here. And he didn't make any of those declarative statements. But had he just kind of done that instead of all of the uncertainty that he had at the end of the season, do you think that changes the mindset of Goody and the front office? And if he had been really engaging with them? Or do you think that this was written because they didn't make the playoffs, this was always going to be the end result?
Well, it was interesting because what Aaron told me was that in the week after the season ended, when he was kind of hanging around Green Bay doing his exit meetings, and he said that the Packers told him that they wanted him back, and they wanted him to retire in Green Bay. They wanted him to stay. And what Aaron said to me, and this didn't make the story, but he said in February something changed. A couple weeks later, Aaron goes on his darkness retreat. Before he goes into his darkness retreat, he told me, he texted Goody and said, I hear some stuff simmering. You know, let's all sit down, me, you, and Matt. And when he came out, he heard from Dave Dunn, his agent, that the Packers were supposedly shopping him to multiple teams. And Aaron at that point said, all right, you're already talking to Goody, Dave. You handle it. I don't have anything else to say to him. The stuff about Goody not being able to get in touch with him in late January when he went out to L.A., that's like, I'm ready to be done with that storyline because both sides have their perspectives on that. It doesn't matter what I believe, what I think, but that was in late January. Then Rodgers feels something changed in February. Then he goes into the darkness, comes out, and then here we are with him wanting to go to the Jets. But it's very clear that this offseason, and this is part of the reason I wrote this story and had it span back a couple of years, was Goody not being able to connect with Rodgers was not the only reason they traded him. It was kind of a last straw. And that combined with how they feel about Jordan, with where they were at with Rodgers' contract, how they came off of last season, it all kind of combined into where we are now. It wasn't just one thing, though that trip out to LA did probably sour things a little bit from the Packers' perspective.
Yeah, Matt, what did when you talked to Aaron, what does he think changed before that darkness retreat?
I think he was wondering the same thing because, like I said, he kind of put it in general terms, like something changed. I think from Aaron's perspective, the Packers were planning to move on from him all along. And Aaron's thing is, well, if that was the case, if you were planning to move on from me all along this offseason and you were planning to get rid of my guys like Mercedes and Tunyon and Cobb and Lazard, not get rid of them, but not re-sign them, I should say, then Aaron says, oh, you should have told me that at the beginning. A part that didn't make the story that he told me, he said in his week after the season, he was at LaFleur's house drinking wine with LaFleur, and he didn't get the sentiment at all from anyone with the Packers that they wanted to move on. But in hindsight, Rodgers believes they wanted to move on all along. So his big gripe, and I know this isn't directly answering the question because I don't think he knows what exactly changed. His big gripe is that he feels he was kind of misled in that week after the season with what the Packers told him about how they envisioned him in the team's future.
Talking with Matt Schneidman from The Athletic on Wilde Tausch. Matt, I'm glad you bring up the other Matt LaFleur. First of all, that anecdote, which you said did not make your story, is it possible that he's sitting at Matt LaFleur's house drinking wine with Matt LaFleur, getting the impression that they want him back because Matt LaFleur does want him back?
Possible.
Right?
I think that's why you don't see LaFleur's name mentioned in this story is because as it was when Rodgers came back from his kind of, not holdout, because I guess holdout at mandatory minicamp, but his off-season off in 21, all along, maybe LaFleur's been involved in some of this, but this is really Rodgers versus Gutekunst and Rodgers versus the front office. So that's why there isn't much LaFleur involved. I'm not sure, how exactly LaFleur felt about wanting Rodgers back. But everyone knows how it works here in Green Bay, especially you two, that there's a very mostly strict hierarchy, I should say, of front office deals with personnel, coaches coach, players play. Now the lines get blurred sometimes, but for the most part, that's how it is. And so really all that mattered in the end was what Gutekunst wanted to do with Rodgers. So I'm not sure how LaFleur felt really mattered all that much to Goody.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm driving at. Hey, I know you've got to get to practice, so do I, but can you stick around for a second portion because I have a few other Matt LaFleur-related questions for you, Matt Schneidman. You got some more time?
Absolutely.
Hey, it's Jesse Nelson encouraging you to sign up and join us on Monday, July 17th at Trapper's Turn in the Wisconsin Dells for the inaugural ESPN Madison Open. And we got a special going on right now. If you head over to espnmadisonopen.com, that's where you can learn more and sign up your foursome. Use promo code ESPN25 this week only, and you get 25% off your registration cost for your foursome. Use promo code ESPN25 over at espnmadisonopen.com. Sign up, join us. Tausch will be there. Matt Hamilton will be there. Other Wisconsin sports stars. It'll be an awesome day at Trapper's Turn, one of the best courses in the state. Head over espnmadisonopen.com. Use promo code ESPN25 for 25% off this week only. Sign up now. Monday, July 17th is the date for the inaugural ESPN Madison Open.
And you know it's good when Jesse Nelson, our producer, who never subscribed for any of the stories I wrote for The Athletic, subscribed to The Athletic for this.
I got.
Matt, I hope there's lots of other people like Jesse who have done the same thing. I want to get to a couple of aspects that involve Matt LaFleur. The first one, I'll go chronologically and within your story. The first one I thought was really interesting because Matt LaFleur came on our show about a week after the draft, and Tausch and I both were surprised at how he really seemed to be going out of his way to make it sound like the Jordan Love pick wasn't his. And a little light bulb went on over my head as I read your story that basically said that Goody and the team decided that they were basically going to lie to Rodgers and tell him that Matt LaFleur wasn't really on board with the pick, that it was all Goody to make the pick. What did you make of that when you got that piece of information for your story?
Yeah, listen, like we just talked about, I think there's that hierarchy here, and from what I have gathered, it seems to be it was more Brian's pick. Now, does that mean LaFleur was never, ever asked about Jordan Love? No. It certainly seems that he's happy present day that he has Jordan. Did he agree with trading up to take Jordan in the first round? I don't know. I think it's fair to say that it was Goody's decision primarily, but I also think it's fair to say LaFleur wasn't completely shut out from this decision. The Packers, regardless of whose decision it actually was, felt that, as it did, and they felt this rightfully so, that the pick would irritate Aaron, as it would anyone in his position. I don't blame him for that. So what they did was tell Aaron, whether you want to call it misleading him or just telling him the truth, that the pick was just Goody's. They did that just to try and protect the relationship between Aaron and LaFleur, because, that's a very important one, and they have to work with each other closest on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, I thought that was not the most interesting thing in the story, but kind of how the Packers braced for telling Aaron, because, yes, the pick came upon everyone quickly. It's not like they planned 3 weeks in advance to take Jordan Love and they were able to tell Aaron then, but I think something that Goody can look back on and say, I probably should have done this, and something that obviously stuck with Aaron is finding out they were taking Jordan Love through a text from Dave Dunn and not anyone from the Packers. And as Aaron says in the story, after he found out they were taking Jordan, he canceled his second McAfee appearance of the night, poured himself some tequila, and waited for someone from the Packers to call him.
And then the other part that involves Matt LaFleur, and this really struck me, and I know there are some that think maybe I'm reading too much into it, but the part about how Love played in Kansas City. Now, you were there for that game. You saw how he played. You also know, as I know, that Matt LaFleur basically takes the blame for absolutely everything, even when it's not in any way his fault, right? That is, if there is a signature thing about a Matt LaFleur press conference, he is going to take the blame. And so this idea that, well, he said after the game that they didn't have a good game plan for Jordan, I'm sure he did. He also took all the blame for Amari Rodgers' failings before they cut him, and for Sammy Watkins injuring his hamstring. Remember that last year? That was Matt LaFleur's fault in Matt LaFleur's world. But I thought it was interesting that Goody, in one of the few quotes from him in the story, says to you, we didn't have a great game plan for him there when he's talking about how Love played against Kansas City. Did you find that interesting? Because to me, when I read that, that sounds like, hey, my guy that I drafted, the reason he didn't play well is because we didn't have a good game plan for him. It's not because he's bad.
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I completely disagree. I don't take it as, maybe you can read into it that way. I'm not calling you crazy, but I honestly think it's this organization's way of doing things to just take the blame, whoever it may be, Goody, LaFleur. Now, is Sammy Watkins' hamstring injury LaFleur's fault? Obviously not, but that's one of LaFleur's flaws, if you want to call it, that he just takes blame for everything. It's also what makes him a good coach, because he protects his players from blame and stuff like that, regardless of whether we can see through that kind of BS or not. I honestly think it was more of a we didn't have a good plan, as saying, us as the team. And listen, even if it was Goody saying Matt and his staff didn't have a good plan, I bet if you hook LaFleur up to a lie detector, he would say, yeah, we didn't. Nobody expected Jordan to go into that game and go gangbusters on the Kansas City Chiefs. He completed 6 of 14 passes to Devontae Adams. It was very clear that being thrust into that on such short notice, I think they only had 1 or 2 days of advance notice after Rodgers tested positive in one of the toughest environments to play in the National Football League, is an unenviable position. Now, obviously in the story, as everyone who read it knows, Goody said that the way Jordan kind of stuck in there and hung with that and responded was impressive. But I didn't read that, honestly, as, the coaching staff set my guy up for failure, made my guy look bad. Because even if Goody was in LaFleur's position and like had his hands on the game plan, there's only so much you can do to set a guy in that position up for success going into that environment on that short notice, with what they had. They allowed 16 pressures in that game. It's a matter of fact, their plan to protect him was not good enough. But there have been other games where they've allowed 16 pressures for Rodgers too. I think it's just how it goes. And if it was a stretch of 6 games where that was the case, I think we could maybe take more validity in what kind of Goody said, and what you're saying is to maybe it was more of a reflection on LaFleur and the coaching staff. But I think LaFleur and Goody, and what I've gathered, are on the same page about this kid. They're really happy about what they have. They're optimistic from what he showed both in games and in practice. And more than anything, they just like the makeup of the kid. By all accounts, and from when I asked Rodgers, they love just who he is as a leader, as a kid. So I don't disagree with you on much, but I'm going to disagree with you on that, though I don't think you're entirely fat SHIT crazy for thinking that.
Yeah, he tested positive on the 3rd. The game was played on the 7th, just to be clear, of November.
Right, so a couple days in advance. Well, the 3rd was a Thursday?
Yeah, and it was a Monday night game.
Sunday. I think Rodgers
Definitely
tested positive Wednesday,
Yeah.
and it was a Sunday
So
game.
it was Wednesday to Sunday. Yep, you're right.
All right, so Matt, before we let you go, you said that LaFleur has done this. Jason and I were trying to figure out, when has Goody ever said that he got something wrong?
That's a good question. He's never going to say it about the love pick itself. I think he said it about, not telling Aaron before the pick actually happened. Listen, I don't think he's ever going to publicly say he got a move wrong, because that would just throw a guy under the bus, and that's not the way he does things. Now, if you get Brian Gutekunst off the record, he'll tell you how he really feels. But in anything you're going to read on the record in my stories, I don't think you're going to get that, just because, as we've seen with how he's handled this Rodgers situation the past 3 years, he kind of just takes the high road. He's kind of let his quarterback throw his name in the fire, which Aaron he has the right to do that. But Goody's way of doing things is not going back at Rodgers or whoever it may be. So does Goody regret making certain moves over the years? Yeah, probably. He probably regrets drafting Jay Sternberger. Are we ever going to hear him say, I shouldn't have done that? No. If Jordan Love doesn't pan out and he stinks the next 2 years, are we going to hear Goody say, looking back on it, I probably should have taken a guy who could stop a nosebleed or a wide receiver to complement Devontae after that season? No, we're not going to hear him say that, because he doesn't want to trash Love, and I respect that about him. Does he regret the way he went about Devontae negotiations? Possible, but he's never going to say that publicly, which I understand. Is it what I want as a reporter? No, but I get it.
Matt, I know you got to get to practice. I did want to delve further into that Devontae issue, but we don't have time, and I know you've got other work to do. But Christian Kirk, I feel a little bit bad for him.
Poor Christian Kirk catching strays.
I'll see you at practice, buddy. Great job on the story. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.